Hello, David.
Well, hello there, Ryan.
Oh, man. For the listeners here, this is going to be a lot of fun. So David is a dear friend of mine, and I'm going to give a little bit of the backstory. You were on the podcast, David, I think 3 years ago or something like that.
Yeah.
I actually remember I was in Florida doing the podcast, and I'm definitely not in Florida right now. So I'll just kind of tee up. I want to give everybody just a little bit of history on how you and I came to be, also friends, what you did to me in the business to begin with. But then I want to kind of tee up messaging and how that ties into strategic planning and finance and more valuable businesses. We'll kind of just tee everybody up for these concepts. And then you and I are going to have a fun dialogue around messaging. That's pretty much
Great.
And right. And for the listeners, when David and I go out for beers and we're hanging out, we're like always like, hey, we should just record this last 4 hours. And it's like, well, we won't let everybody, go through that kind of pain, but we'll try and be concise, and it's going to be a fun dialogue. So why don't you just give the high level overview of your background, David, your passion behind messaging, why you think it's so important, and why your different disciplines actually relate together.
Yeah, I really believe really wholeheartedly in messaging, in connecting with people with words. And words are ideas. And when the idea is good and the words are good and the delivery of it is good, you make connections. And when you make connections, good things happen. So that's what I really believe in. And it comes from a lot of, sources in my life, but it's my foundation career. What I started out with is theater, a professional actor, director, and playwright, all the way up till I was almost 40 years old. That's all I did. And that is all about connecting with an audience through the use of stories and words and images so that they have an immediate response. It's not like we're going to, watch the play 16 times and eventually have a response. It's you have to get them immediately in that moment and they have a response. That's hard to do, but it's really gratifying when it happens. So I turned 15 or so years ago, expanded it into working with business people. Initially,
who actually have money, right? Because you're not eating ramen.
Yeah, right. It's
broke artist is brilliant, but
I mean, when it's really art, then you're going to be broke. If you turn it into some other thing, it's But I started working with business people in insurance first, in just sort of classic sales presentations, and then expanded that to the broader idea of messaging for marketing and making connections. And then along the way, about 12 years ago, started working with lawyers, which is largely the huge part of what I do now is training lawyers. And I'm not a lawyer, but they love that I'm not a lawyer. And they love that it comes from the kind of the outside kind of artistic viewpoint, because what are they doing? They're having to connect with ordinary people and get them to respond instantly to something and then take action on it. That's the key thing. It's not just listen and go, well, that was nice. It's listen and go, I want to do something about it, So it's that and sales marketing language and messaging and connecting with an audience in an entertainment or artistic way are all exactly the same thing. And in a way, I mean, there's different stakes to them all, but they're the same action. And so that's what I do. I mean, in a nutshell.
And I'm so excited to weave all these different stories in your background together. Cause like you said, especially with today, like you and I talk every week about like the crazy, ridiculous stuff going on in the news and the information, the lack of trust in information, and just no one resonating with their audience because of how much freaking noise is out there. And we're gonna put a pin in this because you and I are gonna rally around this in a little bit. But I wanted to come back to, because I've watched your journey as you've been integrating the practice with law and the communication and the presentations with law, or people and assessing their keynotes and the theater and your acting background. I've watched these all come together over the last 4 or 5 years, and have been so exciting to watch, because you got Donald Miller's story brand, and everybody's been talking about selling with stories.
Yeah.
And we're going to make this, you and I are going to take that a step further about like, what does that actually mean? And how does that tie to like what someone can do in a business? But when I was sitting in what's the association, the National Speakers Bureau or something like that?
NSA.
And I was sitting in the back. So for the audience here, this is a fun history lesson, because we have the Intentional Growth 5 principles. David helped create those with me, because it was back in 2017. I won a bet with a gentleman named Kurt Therio, who has a CEO peer group, where if I won the bet, I would be the keynote presenter, and I won. And I was like, oh shit, what am I going to talk about? I've got this awesome
Yeah,
story. And so
right.
I watched David critiquing David Horsager, who wrote The Trust Edge. He's been on the podcast a couple of times. I'm like, David Horsager makes like 25 grand or more or whatever for a presentation. And you're critiquing. I'm like, I don't know. David Mann must know his shit because he's critiquing this guy. I'm like, David, I have no idea what the hell I'm going to talk about. So I literally sat down and engaged with you. And for like 4 different sessions that were like, what, an hour and a half, I just went,
Yeah,
just,
yeah, right, right.
well, and
That which
tell people what you were doing when I was doing that. Like, why did that work? And why was that? Like, how does that tie into your acting, what's going on with
well,
the legal space?
that's all I ever do is listen to people just kind of gush out the unfiltered version of what they're trying to say. And my whole job, the whole thing I created for myself to do is to clean that up into little packages that are understandable. Because if you just gush information at people, it sort of works for the person speaking because they're just, well, I know this and I know this and I know that, they're just, well, here's all the things I know. And then it puts all this pressure on the audience to clean it up and go, well, now I have to make sense of it as the audience. So what I do is clean it up in advance of handing it to the audience, which is what I did with you. And along the way, because all we were trying to do is clean up your 1 hour. Like, what's Ryan going to say in 1 hour that's going to be understandable to an audience? And along the way, we discovered, well, Ryan has a whole mess of stuff that in his business, kind of like what is all these different threads that he's trying to tie together in his business are the reason why it's hard to articulate in a compact form for an audience. And so that's why we were like, well, maybe we should take a look at a little deeper dive than just this one keynote. And that's how we ended up leading to the 5 principles.
Well, and I think, David, a lot of people have issues, like, so Donna Miller's story brand, right? So like, if you confuse, you lose, back when he started with that tagline. And I understand the whole story brand framework, but it doesn't really get through like how are you going to then deploy this in presentations or a podcast or a sales presentation or whatever it might be. And what you there was a conversation you and I were having at one of our happy hours, and it was like, you and I both grew up kind of feeling like, I don't know, everybody's way smarter than us. I must be missing something. And so maybe kind of tell that story, because I think that approach, like when you were doing that to me, you have such high level of tactical empathy. When I say that, you can get into the minds of various audience, whether it's the jury for the legal clients of yours or whoever it might be, is getting into their minds of like, what the hell is this person trying to tell me? Well, and so explain that approach.
That's what we were sitting there talking about, which was such a great kind of awakening, is like, you felt dumb too? Yeah, I felt dumb. I thought I was the only one. It's like this big secret. I always thought it was kind of dumb.
And what do they do? They told me all this stuff about what this company does. I don't know what they do.
And I spent years and years like that, like listening to people talk and going, oh, I'm not following this. And I don't know what they're talking about because I'm dumb.
I'm the problem.
And then went like, or maybe it's that they're not being clear because they don't have their act together, And I mean, I'm talking about listening to just about anything, anywhere. Kind of front and center would be like watching plays. This is where this all started for me, is watching other people's plays who would walk around in the lobby being like, oh my God, I am so important. And everybody's, oh, he's so important. And I'd go to that guy's play and go, I don't know what the fuck that was about. So, like, I don't know.
What did he say? What was it?
What was
that about?
What was it about? And everybody's like, oh, God. It's like total Emperor's New Clothes, like, oh God, it was brilliant, blah, blah, blah. And I'd be like, I don't think so. I guess I'm too stupid. And then when I started to direct plays, rather than just act in them, but to direct them, you can actually control how clear or not clear this is. My production of Macbeth is one of the more complicated, messy, the second half of it is really a messy thing. Shakespeare kind of overwrote that part of the play. So every production of Macbeth I've seen, I've been like, oh my God, I'm so bored. I'm so bored. I want to walk. I'd rather be having beers than watching this stupid play that's supposedly great, So when I directed it, I made sure to clean up that second half by editing it and really streamlining the staging. And people were coming away going, oh my God, I understood that play for the first time. This is a play that's been around for 400 and some years.
Isn't that crazy?
So that's where a lot of that started for me. I was like, you can, from the point of view of the person putting out the material, you can control how clear or not clear it is, and therefore the reaction you're going to get back from those people. You're going to get a positive reaction back if they go, "Oh, I feel smart. I kept up." You know. I mean,
Well, and I think about, I want to tie in the play and the acting, directing part of your past, as well as what you're doing with the
Right.
lawyers.
Yeah.
Because I want to weave this together for the listeners in right now. We're going to tie this into business and marketing and messaging, and then growing a business, and then understanding how to actually go about doing that. But I think so. When I think about the stakes, like when you told me this story back in the day, David, where you're like, you go on and you do a lot of I don't know what the word would be, one person stand up, where it's you going up there, and you go up there and it's a play, or however you want to, whatever the word is for it, but you immediately need to be like awesome for the audience. Like you have 1 second where they're going, this person's either an idiot or not. And then you need to like hook them and then keep them entertained the whole time.
Yeah.
Otherwise they're going to boo you off the stage. And going back to then the attorneys, there's a reason that TED Talks are 18 minutes, right? And the attorneys have 20 minutes to then present to the jury, who's just plain lay people, right? And then it's usually complicated topics. So again, stakes are high, where the people need to understand it and be entertained immediately, and then they need to take action off of it on their own accord. Yeah, which makes a ton of sense. And so I don't even know if there's a thought or question, but I thought when I heard you say those two things, I'm like, well, this is just a freaking business, man. Like, of course, David can help me with this. I just need to relate to the people that are trying to understand how to work with us.
Yeah, I mean, that's the connection. I'll just make the connection right now. I refer to audiences, because you can visualize an actor on a stage in front of an audience, but everything is an audience when you want to connect and make someone care about what you have, what you have to offer, what you've come to tell them or whatever. It's an audience. So clients, potential customers, you just have to visualize it as though, okay, you're in a room together with your key clients, the people that would potentially purchase your services. But they've got an attention span. They've got limited attention
or lack of.
So they're in a room together, but all the doors are open. So at any point they can just walk out if you are not interesting. Okay. So if you visualize your business being in that kind of an environment where those customers are kind of like passing by and going, "What's this?" And then they go, "Nah," and then they literally walk away. If you can visualize that, well, then what are you going to do? Are you going to sit there and go, "Here's the back history of our whole company, and here are the 18 services in great detail that we offer"? Are you going to do that? No, because they're going to walk right through those doors. Mm-hmm. But if you can get their attention, bam, in just a second, so that they go, "Oh, I'm interested." And then Chris Voss, the FBI negotiator, mm-hmm, says you have 7 seconds, which is, I think, pretty accurate, to get them to pay attention, so that they give you another 10 seconds, mm-hmm, so that they give you another 30 seconds. It expands, but mm-hmm, that is the way a performer thinks. And it's the way I always teach all my attorneys that I work with. I'm like, yes, they are required by law to sit there and look at you. And they can't just walk away, because they generally don't walk away literally, but everybody walks away mentally when they're not interested. Mm-hmm. And they're going to be doing that after 7 seconds unless you've grabbed their attention,
Well, and in both of those examples, I think that the business owners listening can go, yeah, the stakes are that high for us as business owners. We're like in a play. You got people staring at you, and what that's going to be like if they don't like you. And then when you're sitting in front of a jury, they were randomly picked, but you're not you're now sitting there in front of a bunch of strangers, and you have to get them to like you and care about you, because you show that you care about them immediately. Otherwise, they're going to be complete. You're not going to be able to control what they're going to be, their actions afterwards. So when I think about, I want to kind of tee up what I see as a huge problem in the marketing messaging space, and tied to kind of the fundamentals of business. And then what I want to do is, then after I do that, David, let's talk about how story brand and some of these other philosophies fit in. And then we can talk about actually some of the like ways that people can actually implement this instead of confusing everybody. So like
Yeah.
what I've seen, and just totally off the top of my head, when I look at businesses, David, you know, at with the intentional growth framework, where we help people understand that like, hey, the financials, more sustainable, predictable, transferable cash flow creates more valuable business. Period. End of story. Okay, how do we generate more clients in the right products and services that we want in order to generate more sustainable, predictable, and transferable cash flow? Well, what happens is I see people, they always try and fix their growth problem immediate with sales and marketing. And
Hmm.
it's like, and I can only imagine the marketers that constantly having issues are like, okay, well, who are you selling what to and why? And people haven't built a strategic plan or and tied that to their numbers. And so like
Yeah.
hypothetically, the way that people should do it is, hey, here's our strategic plan. So we're going to have these products and services in these marketplaces for these reasons, because these are the things that help our ideal clients. Once you've identified that in a strategic plan, you then roll that into a financial budget and you say, okay, here are the different line items and the margins associated with these different products and services. And these are the margins that we're going to make to get the cash flow that we want. Then we can go, okay, how are we going to message to these people with right
Right.
products and services with the right time and attention and the right vehicles? But now we still get to this messaging issue. And if you didn't do everything I just said, you're just pissing away money on Facebook ads or trade shows, just
Yeah.
hoping that people are just going to randomly gravitate towards your generic message. And
Yeah.
it's just completely
Yeah.
like a lost, it's just a,
Yeah, well, I think the appeal of it, why people do that, is they feel like they are keeping busy and they're doing something to build their business. They're spending a lot of money and they're spending a lot of time and they're doing a lot of things. And so they go, see, I'm working hard, I'm building my business. And it's like, yeah, no, I mean, you know, thousands of ads that we see on social media every day that we ignore because they're not relevant to us or they're not capturing our attention or something like that. And it's I see it all the time, that just colossal waste of resources on it's usually not, Donald Miller says confusing messages. Okay, yes, confusing messages are a problem when somebody's trying to sort of dump information or like, here's everything that we do and, just pushed at you. Yes, that's a problem. But I think more of a problem is generic messaging. If you haven't done the work that you are talking about right now, that's the critical work to do in advance, to come up with what is the core idea of our company that is unique. Not so unique that it's freaky, but
Mhm.
just like it's personal and it's relatable and it's what we actually have grounded out. It's what we're really doing. If you don't do that, you end up with everybody's got the same message. We will build your revenue and cut your expenses.
Solutions,
We
innovation,
are
this and that. But
solutions.
I
Yeah.
want to, I want to push back a little bit on that, because I think, like, so what would you say? Like, yeah, you don't want generic, but how many times have you seen the person that's trying to be too cute with their messaging? So how is that different?
Well, I don't see that enough for that to be something that's like a huge problem. I mean, yeah,
Oh,
there are
really?
people who try to they get people can be a little bit too cute with it or too just kind of off
Ambiguous,
the
man.
mark.
Well, because you can. I think, well, maybe a different way of saying it is, the more unique you get to not be generic, the more confusing you are. Like, it's like, honestly, I just want a wealth
Well,
manager. I just want a wealth manager to be like, I manage people's money and I do some financial planning and manage some 401ks, instead of I like whatever bullshit that they're spewing, or a
yeah,
CPA be like, I do audits, tax returns, I do reviews, compilations, and quality of earnings.
right,
That's what I
right.
do, versus like, I'm this trusted advisor that, and all this like crazy ambiguous words or phrases that just confuse everybody. So I don't know, where's the
Yeah.
balance.
Well, that's a great question because, but I would say that the thing is that people don't tend to get when they do the thing you're calling the cute thing or whatever, they tend to just stay really generic and vanilla with
Got
that,
it.
and so it's confusing and vanilla and stupid. So I'll use my own thing as an example. I've been zeroing in on my own messaging for a long time, just calling my company Simple Message, which is like 4 or 5 years now that I've been doing that the company is the thing that I am offering. So you come to me and you get a simple message. That's why I did it that way. So that clears up a lot of it right there. And that's a specific thing. It's not just messaging, it's simple messaging. And then I wanted to go one step further And my current website that's going to be launched like this week, the first thing you see after simple message is own your stage. And then the line, turn your ideas into words that inspire action. So all of that in a row, simple message, own your stage, turn your ideas into words that inspire action, should add up to, oh, I see what this guy basically does. That is not what every other marketing company is saying they do, or every other consultant is saying they do. There's nothing in there that says like, and then grow your revenue. I mean, it's like, yes, duh, of course it's going to help you grow your revenue. And that's on there somewhere else on the page. But I mean, that's what I mean, is that using that stuff. So I could also use your example of your company and where it started and where it ended, because I think what Arcona has done, what we did together basically a few years ago, is a perfect example of something that is personal and not generic, but it's not so out into the weeds in the wilderness that it looks weird. So what we ended up with was intentional growth. So Arcona, intentional growth. Well, everyone isn't saying that about their, that's a unique phrase, but it's not a weird phrase,
Well, and I want to, yes, and I want to unpack that, because you and I were talking about telling the audience kind of the history behind the evolution of the words. But before we do that, David, I want to go back into like the examples of like where this falls flat and where people would be experiencing, like, so when they're kind of thinking about this, like they're probably thinking about, how's my messaging right now? And it's like you said, own your stage. What is the stage? Is it social media ads? Is it sales presentations? Is it a trade show? Is it keynotes? Is it a podcast intros and commercials? Like, you're talking to people in all these different mediums that all, the amount of podcasts, I mean, like 1 million podcasts got created in the last 12 months or 24 months. So like the noise that people have, going out, the point of my comment here is the attention span of 7 seconds, having it come from a place of what does it mean to me? And so few people do that. Like the two books that, obviously Story Brand that we keep talking about, but Bob Mesta's book, Demand Side Selling, taking progress, where like, it's such a good example of like, what the hell does this company or message mean to me to make progress towards what I'm trying to do? Can you kind of tie that together into the short attention span and how you're using that as like the first time when you're stepping up on that stage, and then the rest of the journey starts?
Yeah, well, I think what you're saying is you have to.
Was I not clear or simple?
Well, I can translate.
You're kind of good at that.
You got to lead with them. So leading with what you have relates to them. The first thing that they should sense is that you are telling them how it's what matters to them and not what matters to you. But it has to matter to you too. The thing is that a lot of most companies, the vast majority of companies, lead with themselves. So the first thing that you see on any of their marketing is, we do this and we do this and we do this and we do this. Or
did you just sum up my LinkedIn feed?
Yeah, I mean, really, we do this, we do that. And then it might be like, and here's why we do this and we do this and we do this and we do this, and what we care about and what our values are. All of that is important, and it should be in your stuff somewhere. Of course, you have to have your why, and of course, yes, and people should know that. But the key thing that I'm always working with people on is, but not first. The first thing that they should encounter when they come to your service, whether it's your website or any other way that they're encountering you for the first time, should be something instantly that's about them. And it should say it in words and ideas that says, this is about you. That's why I chose the phrase, own your stage.
Yep.
And nobody's coming to my website going, I want to be an actor. So it's not about an actual literal stage, but it's about what I have underneath it: personal, organizational, and legal. Those are the 3 areas of stage. Great. A business stage. Okay. And then
what format is that stage? Is it online? Is it an actual stage, or is it a podcast? And like,
can be any of those, because stage is such a wide open word. Stage also means stage of development. So it's a wide open word, but the key thing is to say your. And I can't remember your phrase on Arcona's site, but it's something similar to that. Like, this is what you will, you are here. And
if you focus on growing a more valuable business, in parentheses, with the end in mind, you have the ability to turn your vision into reality.
Yeah. And so how many times is the word you in that? Like 4 or 5
Yeah.
times, and
It's
that's
not,
perfect.
Arcona's awesome. No, it's
Yeah, I
like,
mean, it's great. Yeah.
well, and we'll go back to the Arcona example of our messaging, but I think what's also going back to my earlier comment about the mechanics of a strategic plan rolled into the budget with like specific products and service with specific margins that you want
Yeah.
to you want to hit, tying that back to the sales and marketing, the messaging, most people have no idea what products and services they should be selling at what margin, what volume, for what reasons, and actually why their customers really need that shit.
Yeah,
And
right.
like what
Right.
solutions or what problems, going back to Bob Mesta, like what problems are they really solving
Right.
to speak
Right.
to them? Because so like if you think about the refinement of a strategic plan, saying we're going to be doing, intentional growth training, fractional CFO services, strategic planning, valuations because of these reasons, because our clients want to create wealth, make an impact, and have fun. Okay, well that makes sense. And there's a journey there, but most people have never done that work. So then they're sitting there going, we do shit. It's like, okay, we're an advisor, we're a trusted advisor, we'll help you grow. It's like, well, like
Yeah.
you said, and so there's not a foundation to then do the story work, and they don't know why their clients actually need their services. It's almost
Yeah.
this implied that people have to come work with us. So they don't know enough about what it means to them. Is that, I don't know if that,
Well, it's the whole the core of all of this is, again, I use the word audience. Think about your audience. Think about what they're thinking about and what they're wanting and where they are in their lives, and what, you got to spend a lot of time imagining you are them who does not know about you already. And they're not thinking about, oh, I think I need a XYZ service today. If your company is XYZ, they just think I have a problem I need to solve somehow. So I try to stay away from Steve Jobs references, but it's so perfect for this. If you think about before there was an iPod, before we just took for granted that you could have all that music in a little device, a lot of us had the problem of like, I drive my car and I have 600 CDs, or it used to be cassettes, all over the car, and reaching for, like I can only have one album at a time in my Walkman. I mean, that was the life we all lived and took for granted. So he could have gone like, oh, well, I want to make the world's best technology, and it's got to have all these bells and whistles, and it's got to have all this memory, and marketed it that way. But he kept pushing and went like, no, that's not it. That's not it. And what they came up with, if you remember, the very first tagline for the iPod before there was a smartphone was 10,000 songs in your pocket, which is the perfect thing, because you're like, now that has solved my problem. I need to have 10,000 or however many thousand songs available to me all the time. Now my problem is solved. I don't really care the technology behind it. You have solved my problem. And he was able to lead with that message and get people to go, I want one of those. I want one of those. I want one of those, because it's a problem solved in one phrase,
Well, and I want to give a completely different, because it's a wonderful example, but I think I'm putting my hat back on when we sold copiers and IT services.
Yeah.
No one gives a shit. I'm just going to say it right out. Like we pretended and tried so many things to pretend that we weren't a commodity. It's just like, dude, we sell copiers. Everybody freaking hates them. They print, they scan, they should be colored. It needs to freaking work just like the light switch. You turn it on, it's got to work. And if it doesn't, you're pissed. So like, I think so many times, and especially in like the general economy, not everybody's creating the next iPod or the next AI or the next, Bitcoin platform or Coinbase or whatever it might be. It's like, no, they're a CPA, or, oh, by the way, you're a steel fabricator and you will be tomorrow. And, or by the way, you're a consulting firm that does this.
Yeah.
How does this apply to people that are just doing normal things like that, but are still trying to relate to their client that might not be interested in what they're doing?
Yeah, that's a really good nuance to throw out there, because everyone isn't making an iPod.
I know. It's like, what iPhone, iPod? It's been a while.
iPod, yeah, all that stuff. Yeah. So I think that the thing is that you're I agree completely on making it just totally clear what you do. So I'm a CPA. Like that needs to be. Can't be.
I sell copiers. Hey, by the way,
copiers.
Oh, like I'm a risk mitigator. Blah blah blah. No, Oh, you sell insurance.
Yeah,
It's
right. I
like,
know. Oh my God. Yeah, it just gets so exhausting.
just tell me what you do.
So there's other stages in a sense of where you can communicate. So if the kind of basic service you're offering is something that is just sort of like I sell copiers, well then you've got the process can be something that you can articulate very simply. How do you sell them, and how have I alleviated your problem getting a copier? Or another stage could be the here's who we are and what this is, where it would be like, this is how, the kind of people we are, the kind of values we have. Can you communicate that in the simplest, clearest, most like 3-second way possible, so that people go, oh, you're my people. You are my people selling copiers.
Well, and I want
And
to
all
pull
those are
that
messages.
right, and I'll pull that thread because a good strategic plan where you're doing a SWOT, you're doing the flywheel, you're doing your ideal customers and how your product and market or your product and services fit into a marketplace.
Yeah.
You're identifying your uniqueness, and then you're using that as the story. Is that a good way of kind of
Yeah.
summing up what
Right.
you're saying?
Right.
Like, yeah, you sell copiers and they're commodities, or you're a steel fabricator, but what are the main problems of people that buy steel? Oh, is it showing up with the right measurements? Is it the right
Yeah.
right consistency of pricing, or whatever that is? You're still able to go back and go, what are the problems that the
I
clients
mean,
are
the,
experiencing?
if the product or service is something that is pretty, ordinary, go to the process, the process of getting that product from you. If you can make that seem like it's just as easy as buying a pair of shoes, then that's what you need to focus on. And that's usually the layer that people just do not pay any attention to in their messaging. It just looks like a confusing process, or it's a process I don't even know how to do it. How do I buy this from you? And when it is something that you can literally click a button and buy, it's it's like a product. Well, then okay, it's pretty easy to make that simple. But with, I think, a lot of the listeners here, the process isn't just I buy it one time and now I've bought that thing. It's more of an ongoing thing. It might have stages to it, to the purchasing. There's going to be, we're going to work together for
Engagement
part
or
one and part two and part
deployment.
three. All of that has to be instantly understandable and matter to them. That like, oh yeah, I'm going to get something that I need on all stages of this process, and be able to see it like in one graphic or something like that. I mean, you've done a great job on that on your site. It's like, oh, I see. This is a pretty, could potentially be a big engagement, but it looks really simple.
Well,
And that's what
it's so interesting because my wife just got a new marketing job as a marketing manager, and for the last 12 months that she was looking, David, the amount of companies she applied for, she's like, what the F does this company actually do? And she's got upwards of like over 15 minutes that she spends on some of these websites going, I still don't know what they do. And it's
yeah,
so funny,
right.
even to explain how bad this problem is. I was in the market for fractional marketing services, like over like a half a year ago or something like that. And the amount of fractional CMO companies that I went to their website, and I have no idea how they work, how to engage with them, how they
Right.
charge. Is it outcome-based, value-based,
Yeah.
retainer-based, hourly-based? And it's just absurd like this. I don't want to, this will kind of shift us to this next conversation, is like how frustrating it is as a buyer of services. Like I'm just putting your and I's conversation where how frustrated you and I get just trying to engage with people because they make
Yeah.
it so freaking hard
Yeah.
to actually
Right.
understand what they're doing and how do I work with you?
Yeah. I know. That's it. It's once you do it, it's like makes everybody's life easier. But I mean, I've been sort of like working on this website of my own for the latest and greatest that what I'm doing now. Every page of it, I am not just the front page, but all pages, I'm looking at as, okay, can someone go to this page and in 7 seconds they know what this page is about and how to engage for this particular part of what I do. All of it on a phone, in this much space. Just it's got to be that, and that takes work and attention. The thing is it's a lot of sort of like attention that you need to spend one time at the front end of doing this stuff, and then you can just relax because you know that everybody is going to it and they're getting the message very quickly, boom, 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 and you can really cut down on the expenses of 2 million Facebook ads and all that stuff that you talked about before,
Well, let's talk about like I'm trying to think of how to articulate this. Is like it's so hard. Let's just use my example in the last 7 years of some pain that we went through to develop this. Is like it's so damn hard when you've got a lot of experience and you know you can provide a lot of value, and it is complicated what you do. That when you said that the stress goes down, when I finally got to the point with our messaging that I knew people understood, then that's when the stress dissipated. But it was
Yeah.
the choice of words that took so long to get there, and watching how flat the messaging used to fall was just
Hmm.
so exhausting. Yet it felt like I was always trying to relate to the business owners or the people that were our potential clients, but seemed like this huge valley between what they needed and how I was describing what we were doing was helping them. So what is the
Yeah.
process that's like, so when people are listening in here, how do you get to the point where you understand what their actual problems are and how you fit into it, and then how to keep it simple, but also within 7 seconds? I mean, the whole thing is just a difficult.
It takes a lot more than 7 seconds to do it, you know.
No, no, no,
So
no. The 7 seconds to
no,
get
I know,
someone
I know.
to
But that's
their
I'm
attention.
just highlighting the
Yeah, I
fact that
see.
it does take some front end work and attention. It's to come up with a simple message that is really that really resonates and does the job. You know, it takes a lot of time at the front end, but then when you have it, you have it. So I'll tell a little bit of the story of intentional
Yeah,
growth,
we can unpack that too.
because that was like at the very, very beginning, your service was associated with like financial planning or something. And you said, no, I don't, that's nothing to do with, I don't want to be, because that's way too limiting. And then it became, okay, well, it's about exit planning, and then exit planning, various versions of exit planning. And like, this is like months or even years are passing where you're like, wow, what
It
is
was
it?
growth and exit. It was growth and exit. I mean, it
Yeah,
was
because
both at once.
exit planning for a while, then you went, yeah, but we gotta consider the growth part. So it's growth and exit. Okay, great. And then they had that for a while. And then then you decided to name it Arcona, which is its own little story, and that's great. And then it was, I remember this so clearly because you were like, yeah, but we need one idea, one concept, like traction. You know, that Gino Wickman's traction and the tire on the cover of the book. You know, it's like it has like this image that you can instantly identify with that also says what the company does in one little image. And we were sitting there on the phone and we were like, oh. And I said, just talk. What is it that you're trying to get? What are the people saying about working with you? And what is it that you're trying to like highlight? And you were just talking. And Pat was on the phone too. And you occasionally would say, it's just that they want to be intentional about what they do. They want to have a plan. They get their intentions to be straight. And you use this word. And I said, hang on, I think that's the word we want, intentional. And then you and Pat kind of were quiet for a minute and weren't like, yeah, I think that's great. I think that's
And
it.
full disclosure, I'm pretty sure I bought 90 domains throughout this process.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
GoDaddy got a couple bucks for me throughout this entire process.
But the idea here, so you went with intentional, and then you guys put growth after it. So intentional growth. And was like, that's exactly perfect. But the point I'm making for the audience here is that because you asked, how do you do this? You have to have someone else who's kind of, this is why what I do works, I think, is it's someone else who's outside the business that is just listening for the kinds of things that you automatically and organically say about what you're doing for your customers. You need to have the data of who your customers are and how they think and yeah, sure, you got to have that. But that does not lead to a message. That sort of sits in a vault. And a message is another whole step. And what I usually do is just get people talking and talking. And honestly, once they get a little exasperated and a little tired, you know, and it's like, you know, we're looking at snack time. Can we just get to snack time? That's when the best stuff comes out. They're not trying to make it correct. They're just going, and they're just talking.
Damn it, it's just someone with intentional growth.
Yeah, you were like, it's intentional. You were kind of like, God, I just want what is the word? And you kept like authentically using that word in trying to communicate to me what you were trying to figure out.
Well, and one thing that I want to, for this exercise for the audience, like I was the customer we're now marketing towards. right? So like
Yeah,
I
yeah,
kept
yeah.
literally going into my past, going, I remember when I was sitting at the computer and I didn't even know what to Google. Like I was like looking for help because I had things that I wanted to do, but I
Yeah.
didn't even know how to articulate them. So like I think as part of this exercise, it's absolutely being in the mindset of the customer and what the hell they want and why. Like
Yeah.
people don't think
Yeah.
about that enough.
Right.
It's more of like, here's how we do what we do and why we do what we do. It's like, that's irrelevant right now. This is about like, why the hell would someone want to even look at an ad or a website page of yours? It's only because it matters to them. And I think
Yeah.
that's when you and I continue to, riff back and forth on our happy hours and the get-togethers. It's like how ridiculous messaging is. Like, dude, the fact that I still have to watch commercials now on Hulu or whatever it is, it's like I don't randomly want to buy a car in the middle of my TV
I
show.
know the car
It's just
ads.
what a
Oh my
waste
God.
of money. But there's this
Yeah.
people just don't understand the other side of the story most of the time.
Yeah. I mean, it takes, I usually put it in, I say, you have to use your imagination. I think a lot of times people in business don't like the idea of imagination because it sounds random and uncontrolled. It sounds childlike. It sounds not serious, not time well spent. And I'm like, nope, it's your best friend. You have to actually just imagine, what if I were the customer and what if I had this problem? So you're going to use your imagination, you're accessing the data that you know in your knowledge base. But and then you go, okay, let's just like relax for a second and just like imagine I'm that person. What am I thinking? What am I feeling? What am I wanting? And these answers will start to come because you're thinking of it from a different angle. This is what I did with a furniture company in town, which they got cold feet and ended up sticking with their old messaging, which I don't think works at all. But their messaging is all about discount right now, discount. Hey, and get this couch and that couch and 25% off this weekend only. That kind of really hardcore mail flyer kind of sales stuff. And their lawyer is my contact to them. And he was like, they really need to refresh this and make it a wider message for more people. They want to be more upscale. And I'm like, well, nothing says not upscale like coupons in the mail for 25% off. So I got them to think of it. This came right from demand side sales. I was like, where is you're only speaking to customers who are right before buying. They've got the money in their hand. They just, should I go to that furniture store or that furniture store? Oh, this one has a discount. I'll go there. That's the only people you're talking to with that messaging. So I was like, why don't we dial it back and imagine that we're a customer like me, frankly, who's like, I don't really know I have a furniture problem. I just have a living space issue. Like I don't, my living space seems dark and I don't like it. I'm not at the point of buying. I'm at the point of having that problem. So if you can speak to that person in that state of mind, you're going to have a way wider net of people that you can message to. And they ended up not doing it, but it's like, yeah, but that would work. And
let's talk about why people don't do that. And like, because I think it's fear. I want to go back and use my example, and I want to hear your comments about why people have this fear. But like when we were going through the growth and exit planning kind of vernacular, and then we landed on intentional growth. And before we went through your discussions, and then Pat and I went through and we did the story brand book together, but we built through the website, and it was terrifying not explaining, like, by the way, we have training and you're going to learn about valuations and EBITDA and exits and PE firms and ESOPs. And so it was like, here's everything we're going to do, because out of this fear that people aren't going to know all the value they're going to get. And so I was doing it where, like, truly, when we got to this point where, like, the process showed us that this is the simplest truth that is relating to their personal challenges. And it has nothing in it besides intentional growth, grow the value of your business with the end in mind, to create wealth, enjoy work, and make an impact. We're not talking about the training or the technical things in the training or the CFO services.
No one cares about that at first. Your website does have information on that deeper in once they're interested, because you've got them interested in the first thing. So yeah, I mean, you guys coming up with.
I feel bad even using our shit too much. It's like, let's go back to the furniture example. I'm even thinking of, like, it's specifically to hone in on this the fear people have, is that why they don't want to get to the simple truth? And
Yeah.
like what is it?
Yeah,
Because
absolutely it is. It's comfort zone. It's like it's comfortable to do what you've always done. This is the biggest obstacle that my work with people on messaging faces is I can come up with, or I help them come up with, we all come up with together, the essence of what they do and then put it into words. And they look at those words and they go, damn, that really says it. That's really what we do. And then they proceed a lot of times not to do it because it's going to require changing something. And if they change something, they go, oh my God, what happens if we change it and then it doesn't work and then we lose money and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, I mean, if you're going to grow at all, you're going to have to break some eggs to make the omelet. You know, you're going to have to do a couple of things differently and change the form of stuff and risk a tiny setback for a short time to get a way bigger payoff down the line. And that you're 100% right. It's all about a fear of risk. And the bigger the company, the bigger the risk, you know?
Right. And I think that what mitigates that fear of that risk is knowing your customers more intimately and what the freaking problems are that you're solving. Because then, like when we went through all that exercise, I'm like, truly, it's the people are so sick and tired of waking up every year in the same spot, spending all the time and money and headaches and all that stuff and going, I haven't made any progress towards something. And what is that? Oh, it's more wealth, more happiness, and a bigger impact. And it's like, okay, that's truly what and they're so frustrated with that constant. And I came up with those kind of some of those ideas with Pat when we were like, that's exactly how I felt, which is why we sold the business, because we felt so trapped and we shouldn't have. And so but I was tapping into my own background, David, versus like, I think customer or companies and owners listening in, the more they know their clients and understand their problems, the less fear they might have. And I don't know how you've seen other people get to that point.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. The thing that I'll again point out what you're saying is you're using
because I wasn't clear again.
No, well, no, you're being clear. I'm just going to highlight that you're using emotional language. So people are frustrated with such and such and such. They're sick and tired of such and such and such. And that this is the problem that your company is addressing, or a good company is going to tap right in to that emotional layer with their customers and what is bothering them and causing them some kind of anxiety or frustration or pain or something. And then the message needs to somehow speak to that very quickly. And that's the most visceral response people are going to have, is that. But it requires a fair amount of empathetic understanding of other humans. I mean, you could just get into this a little bit deeper and go, that's a thing that it would be good for all of us to practice on a daily basis all the time, not just thinking about our business, but the more you can practice, like just, well, what is that other person maybe feeling right now in traffic? Or what is that other person feeling at the store that I'm just around, or close people in my personal life? What are they maybe feeling? And just spend a second and go, okay, I think I can kind of figure out what they're probably feeling. And the more you do that, the more automatic it comes on a personal level. And then it becomes automatic to do it on a more macro level with your own customers. But you can't get that kind of thing by just running, surveys and spreadsheets and stuff only. You have to also use your own humanity.
Well, and I want to kind of switch to kind of the macro picture, which you and I love riffing off of, is that like, I'm going to, in no particular order, and I don't even know if there's going to be a question here, but I want to tee something up to you, is like, I think it's more of like an observation, is I think what's happened over the last, call it 5 to 7 years, of the proliferation of podcasting, YouTube, and other forms of content that circumvent big media and politics. So 10 years ago, it would be like, politicians stand up and tell us what to do, which we all know how we all feel about that already. Yeah. And then big media goes, we're going to control the narrative. And you have the Sunday paper, and you have the local news, and you have the big 4 channels, and listen to this shit. And they didn't have to be creative. So now what they're all
Right.
big media's panicking, getting clickbait bullshit, spreading misinformation because they don't actually know their audience at all. Like politicians know shit about the American public and what they
Right.
want.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so here we are in this whole different world where like you and I have been talking about podcasters now. I mean, Russell Brand has like 5.5 million subscribers. I mean, Joe Rogan or
Yeah, I know, right.
Sam Harris or Jordan Peterson,
Yeah.
whatever anybody thinks about these people, I don't care, and is not the point. We can't acknowledge, or we can't ignore the fact that CNN's top news whatever gets 900,000 people, and now like random people that are podcasting are getting 4 million.
Yeah.
Because
Right.
what are they doing? They're talking to us on
Yeah.
a human to human basis and not being patronizing or condescending. And I think maybe the comment or thought in here is that I think that the business community has been using the old way that we've been kind of trained on how to abide, and going, hey, like it's now time for us to lean into the humanity, because the difference between big business and big media is they truly don't know what the hell's going on in normal America. But the companies and the business owners that we're talking to right now do.
Yeah.
Like they
Right.
actually
Right.
have the secret sauce that is potentially there for their success down the road. I don't
Yeah.
know. Like I said, I don't know if there's a question
Well,
there or
yeah,
more.
I can always find something to respond to and all that.
That's why I like it. That's why we're friends. It's like, hey, here's Ryan's random shit, and like David's gonna make something
Yeah.
of it.
I think it's so what you're describing here is there's a lot going on in that. So if we go back to the idea of big media, CNN, whatever, ABC, whatever, versus all these podcasters, we have a preconceived notion that CNN or any of the big companies is filtering everything that they're doing. Like they're curating and orchestrating what we're hearing. Now, we don't know that for sure, but we pretty much suspect that's probably what's going on. The whole thing's very slick. It's very organized, and then you listen to a podcaster who's just like, hey, I'm just talking. I'm real. Yeah, man. I'm just talking in my microphone. It's picking it up, So we get an instant sense of it being authentic. Okay. Now, the thing is that to really have a feeling that you trust someone, it takes time. This is one of the things I talk about with the lawyers when they're doing opening statements, is that you need that jury to trust you immediately, but trust takes a long time to build. Real trust takes a long time to build. So if we're trying to trust some kind of news outlet, be it a big one or, a podcast, it's going to take some time for an experience with that thing to go, okay, enough repetition of something that I trust is happening, and now I'm going to I'm going to allow my trust. I'm going to give my trust. So the game of messaging becomes, how do you get people to have that sense of trust in that 7 seconds or that 30 seconds? It can't possibly be real trust yet, but it has to feel like trust, and it has to open the door that they will allow you then to do more, so that they will eventually truly trust you. But a lot of messaging shuts the door, bam, right at the outset. And you have no sense of trust in the beginning, so it can't be built. And that's a huge problem, I think.
Well, and let's talk about like why words and the choice of words matter. And like, how
Yeah.
do you take what you just said? Because I think it's one of the most important things we've talked about so far, is that's really what we're trying to do, is build trust and empathy
Yeah.
right away. But again, like what was I talking? Someone was over this conference recently. It was like, this whole thing with trust or like authenticity. Like you can't do that on purpose. Like you either are authentic or not, or you either kind of are trustworthy or not. And it's like, so then to manufacture that seems weird or like
Okay.
not natural. Oh, okay, I can see
Yeah.
you got something to say on
Okay,
this.
man.
Oh boy.
I'm going to try to rein in all the stuff I have to say about that, because that is the core issue with our culture in it right now. I think on this topic is this confusion about what authenticity is, because any actor can tell you that the objective of the play or the scene is to get the audience to believe that person that you are playing on the stage. It has to be, you cannot fake it really. But at the same time, you got to play that character 8 shows a week for months. So can it really be really, really real? Especially if you're playing somebody real who's like, crazed serial killer or something. I mean, can it really be really real? No, it can't be. But it has to have a sense of authenticity about it in that moment that the audience can relate to. And so it is real authenticity, but on cue when you need authenticity to happen. Any good actor can tell you that this is a very, very ordinary state to be in. The microphone goes on and you're like, okay, I am now going to clear out my mind, get really focused and centered, and be completely authentic right now into the microphone. This is the tone where you are authentic, but it's also kind of on purpose, you know?
Well, and
Um,
I'm thinking about back to when you and I were going through the 5 principles and working on my keynote. It was practice, 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 and then you don't have to worry about the words or the
yeah.
medium. You get to have all that. You can fill in with how that works on the in the acting world, or like even with the lawyers, but that all that shit dissipates, and then you can actually focus on being yourself because you're not having to worry about all the
Yes.
mechanics that
Yeah,
screw you
exactly.
up.
This is, oh my God, this is so, yeah. If I just zero in on giving a presentation, everybody thinks practicing the thing is going to kill it. It's going to kill all of the spontaneity, and it's, oh my God, man, I can't. If I practice, I'm going to get so like stiff, and it's going to feel like no, and people, it's not going to be real. So I got to just kind of like I'm going to put together a bullet point list, and I'm going to go out there and just talk because I'm awesome. And the thing
Emperor's
is
new
that
clothes, right? Or whatever you said.
this is
That.
why I think podcasts are so popular, is because you more or less can just function off of a sketch of what you're going to talk about. That's the environment. That's what's expected. And people can just click it off if they're bored, you know. But if you're doing a live presentation, just talking it doesn't work because it's too random, it's too free associated, it's not considering the audience. But at the same time, reading something off a sheet of paper or memorizing it word for word when you're not an actor, that doesn't work either because it's too stiff. So the sweet spot is right in the middle, where you have, exactly like you said, you've spent the time organizing the whole thing meticulously and carefully and practice it over and 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 over until it becomes effortless. And now you
Mhm.
can just live in it. I mean, I always say this, no one wants to see actors doing a play on the second day of rehearsal. It's like awful. No one would pay money for this. Professional actors, it's awful. I've seen it a million times. They practice it hundreds and hundreds of times before an audience sees it. And then they can just relax back and like totally invest in that moment. It takes that much work to be effortless, you know?
And how I can personally relate to that over my last 8 years is the first 5 years, as I was developing the 5 principles before I partnered up with Pat and now Matt, it was, what do you do? I don't really fucking know what I do. Like, but I'm going to
Yeah.
for sure help you. Like, and I've got a lot of ideas and a lot of experience, but then it was like, as like, in like the panic and the anxiety of going to conferences or talking to clients or sending out ads or doing a blog or what, like there was a lot of anxiety because it's like, I don't know what I haven't done the work, the rehearsal, like you were talking about, to figure
Yeah.
out exactly what the client's problems are and how we fit into that and how the words matter for them to be in that 7 seconds to start with the trust and start the conversation. And
Yeah.
now it's
Right.
like, it's effortlessly happening. Right. And
Yeah.
so and like, so just for the audience listening in, like the extra work where you're like, hey, we don't have time for that. It's the whole, if you get 6 hours to chop down a tree, spend the first 4 sharpening the axe, and it truly works. And the feeling of less stress is real. And it
Yeah.
just,
Right.
and then that could be deployed via ads online. It could be in sales presentations, keynote presentations, on the podcast. And that all, every time you have those opportunities, doesn't become a stressful endeavor of having to recreate some. I remember back, and I don't know if you got comments on this, but like every time someone wants to do like a new website page or new product launch or new this, they recreate and have to, like, they think that they have to have another magic bullet every time. And in the effort of doing that, they make everything worse.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I mean, if you've carefully, I love this sharpening the axe metaphor. That's great. If you've carefully sharpened the axe and you really know what your business is about, and you have carefully got it down to like a good idea that can be articulated 3 or 4 different ways in words, but it's like this core idea, then every time you introduce a new aspect of that business, it should be wired right back to that core idea. And it really isn't that much work you just go, okay, well, we've got a new service And it's easy to link back to that core idea because we did the work to not just create the idea, but like you said, create a business that has that is coherent and makes sense. I think there's a lot of people, I've definitely been falling into this myself, that when they are forming their business, they're trying to be everything to everybody all the time. They're trying to do way too many things. And so that in it, from your angle, that in and of itself is a problem. Like maybe, weed out some of the stuff that you shouldn't even be doing at all.
Well, and
then,
let's take that and relate that actually to how people can do that. Because a lot of times, David, people use their gut to do that. And
yeah,
very, very, very guilty of that. Was a victim of that for sure. Victim of myself. is if you look at your financials and you say product line or by service line, what the hell do we make the most amount of money on? Where are our highest contribution margins? And then it becomes obvious, like, we shouldn't do this shit because we don't make any money off of that. Now you don't have to message to it. Or if we double down on these products and services because we make the highest amount of margins on that, oh, maybe we should refine our messaging to these. I mean, it becomes so insightful of where directionally do we want to focus the messaging to enhance the bottom line. It's not that damn complicated, but people use so much gut off of it. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, you do that, and then I think the thing is when you do get into messaging it, you put together various ideas and various wording to describe that particular aspect, that service or that part of your business. If you can't make any connection back to the core idea of your company, that's another indication maybe you probably should just break that piece off and form a different company to do that thing, or just cut it off entirely. If you can't, for the life of you, make any connection in words, there probably isn't a connection,
So I want to, as I know we're getting short on time here, I want to go back. For some reason, I get so intrigued with your practice with the attorneys, because you truly have normal people, a diverse set of normal people sitting on a bench judging you from the moment you start talking. And you've told me so many stories of when you'd be working on these 20-minute presentations and you give it to the attorney, and everybody's been probably laughing about this. So it's one page and then you get it back and it's like 17 pages.
Yeah, right.
This boiling it down to simplicity. And another layer of a concept on top of this, David, is when you and I were talking in December, and we were talking kind of how art, I have this weird appreciation of art now, more so than I've ever had, because there's so much shit that's so complicated right now. But then you start to realize that in art, or like whether it's a play or a poem or a picture or whatever it is, how they boil it down to the simple truth that's in it.
Yeah.
And so like the combination of what you're doing with the attorneys and then art, it just kind of like maybe gives some ideas of like how to find the simple truth in something that's happening. Like, I don't know how you go about doing it, or how, like, what happens when you get those sheets that you have to cut through, and like, how do you know that it's the noise?
Well, I think that the angle I'd like to answer that from is really like when people are trying to create an end result, okay? Especially in business, but I would say it's kind of anywhere, they tend to want to get to the end result. They want to go like, okay, I'm creating an opening statement, so I will sit down and write an opening statement. And I'm like, and I have this whole thing in my presentation about this, is maybe don't start with trying to write it down. Maybe start, because it's ultimately going to be spoken. Why don't you start by speaking it? Just like spitball what you might kind of say, and then write some stuff, then throw that away, and then talk again. So the answer to how do you do this is to not aim for the end result too fast. And you're going to start to find that you are going to accidentally say exactly the right thing sometimes. And you're going to have a lot of revision. That's another thing, is people don't like revision. They like to get it right on like the second try. And I'm like, no artist worth their salt gets every now and then you hear about, okay, they had a brilliant, like Paul McCartney woke up with the tune yesterday in his head and wrote it down. And that is a true story. But how many millions of hours did the guy work on other stuff slavishly before he got that one moment of that barely ever happens. So it's like, generally people who work on a good piece of art, that when you see it, it is boiled down to the essence. It's because it went through 100 million revisions to get there. And they went, this is the core of the whole thing. And I can't say enough. I mean, that's just how it works.
Which is tying into eventually the emotions and what the person wants to feel about that interaction. Right. I mean, that's really what it is all boiling down to. And I think it's, I don't know, man. Like I'm trying to think of the example that we were talking about in December, where like it's what is it? Is it Einstein that was talking about taking the complex and making it simple and how damn hard that is? Or what I
Yeah.
mean, there was another example, David, that I think you and I've talked about of like, was it Mark Twain or whatever that said,
Oh yeah, the letter thing.
yeah,
That
okay, you're perfect. Why don't you tell the story? Because I think it's amazing.
that's been attributed to Mark Twain, Abraham Lincoln. I mean, lots of people, but it doesn't really matter because what it is I would have written you a shorter letter, but I didn't have the time.
which
You
is
know?
I think that is the best summary of like what we've been talking about, which it
Yeah,
takes time to boil this down, and it takes an intimate knowledge of what your customers need,
yeah,
and then the
yeah,
time to
yeah.
relate it.
You can't, I mean, what we're talking about here, just to kind of summarize this, is that to get to the simple messaging that's going to have the most resonance with your audience, you have to do all kinds of work on who you are and what your business is, and like all of that you're talking about. And then understand that the message is not just going to like pop, like automatically appear after you've done that work. That's another set of work that has to be done to take your company and then put it into that nice, elegant, simple. And again, I will say it's not all one tagline. I mean, I use the 10,000 songs in your pocket thing. Yeah, it's not about getting one tagline. It's getting a core idea that might have 4 or 5 or 6 different, slightly different applications of that idea, depending on whether it's a website or a social media post or something else. But that's
It's to start the conversation. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
It's the whole point, is to start the conversation. And I think, also to also summarize, like so many people go work on their marketing and their messaging when they don't have a strategic plan, and they don't have that tied to where they actually make money.
Yeah.
So people get in these rooms, and my heart goes out for all the marketing and sales people out there, because this happens every day. And then you get into this room of a bunch of executives, and all they do is fight because no one actually knows where they make their damn money. And then all the people that are fighting are coming out, well, I'm good at this and I'm good at this, and I do the audit division, or I do the, the tool and die division, or whatever it is. And so that's what we need to talk about. It's like, well, you have 2% of the revenue, so pound sand. It's like, it doesn't matter. Like we don't need to focus on that. So I think, yes, you said we have to spend the time, but the first part is figuring out where you should spend the time.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah. I mean, I don't know. Also, people a lot of times have heard this word story and storytelling, and we should be telling a story, and we need a story brand. And they've heard this vaguely kind of tossed around, and they have no idea what they're going to do, what that means even. So where you're saying you can go around a table and like everybody who works in the company is fighting because they don't really know what the company does. I would say, okay, everybody go around the story. How are we going to reflect this in story? What's the story? And somebody's going to say, well, the history of our company is blah, blah, blah. I'm like, bored. I'm bored already. I'm also going to say the story is, and they're going to give me a bullet point list of everything that they offer. I'm like, I'm totally bored, really bored with that. And nobody means the same thing when they say story. And the only story that matters for marketing is the customer's story. Who are they? What are they striving for? What's their problem? And how are you going to, on an emotional level, and how are you the person who is best suited to solve that problem for them? That's the classic story brand thing, but it's not story brand. It's just hero's journey. I mean, this is Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, just boiled down to the core.
And then what I had issues with, well, I mean, I didn't have issues with the story brand framework because it's a great framework, but then you have this like great story, but like how is it different on a podcast ad versus or podcast commercial or a keynote presentation or a sales handout? Like, what words need to be used on each of those? That's where it kind of gets to your point of getting that story, the key idea, and then putting it in the right format on the right medium that you're using. So we could keep going forever, and we'll spare the audience anymore.
Sometimes.
Yes, and we have. It's in the middle of the day, so no beers here. But for the audience that wants to know more about your process or how to find you, what is the? I don't know if you want to give an overview of the practice, or maybe just go to your new website. What is the best way to reach you?
Yeah, by the time this airs, the website will be up. It's just www.asimplemessage.com. asimplemessage.com. I had to put the there.
And if you don't know what David does when you go there, you have full
Yeah,
total
you can just
permission to
like
reach out to both of us and be
right,
like, dude, you failed.
right. Well, I mean, it's, I gotta say, I am, the reason I do this is because it's been a struggle for me I mean, switching from being like a full-time artist to doing this stuff. Well, there were some messaging problems. I didn't understand audiences. I mean, yeah, there was a whole, so
It's a
I have
process.
to remind myself to do this too. But go to the website. Probably we'll have it clickable on the podcast here somewhere. And that's the best way to get in touch with me.
Will you give us a gift of any of the commercials or things that you've done in the past where I can link those on the website or no?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
So David, I have seen David do so many ridiculous commercials. I'm like, man, you are brilliant. There, I mean, it's everything from medical device commercials
yeah.
that you can only imagine where your head would go to these plays to different things. So if we
Yeah.
can
I mean,
snag a couple of those.
there's been lots of what I do now is voiceover though, so it's not me on camera, but I could send you whatever. But I mean, I gotta say, voiceover has been it is like you have to sit down and read this terrible copy. This is why it's so ironic that I do this, because I'm like, I can't change what they're saying in their stupid ad that's not well written, that doesn't have a clear message. They haven't hired me to fix any of that. I just have to read it and make it sound like it's really good by strictly only my vocal inflection and vocal tone to make their bad message sound like a good one.
So no lipstick on that pig. That's pretty much what it is.
Right.
Last question. I always ask what people what their definition of intentional is, because it's the name. And so now you're on the spot with the one that's been helping you've been part of the journey. So what's your definition of the word intentional?
Oh, knowing where you want to go. I mean, having a feeling that is motivating you forward. That's how I describe intentional.
Love it, man. Thanks so much for coming on the show, David.
You bet. Thank you for having me.